Hello. As an island nation, Britain has always relied heavily on our navy for security. This was never more the case than during the Napoleonic Wars. With the Grande Armée poised across the English Channel, it was the navy who protected our shores, and at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805 ended all threat of invasion. But conditions for sailors on the lower decks were harsh, and recruitment was a persistent problem, particularly in times of war. At its peak in the Napoleonic Wars, the naval manpower requirement was for 150,000 men. From 1795 to 1815, there were three main means of recruitment: voluntary service, the quota system, and impressment. There were financial incentives for volunteers. Men who volunteered received protection from creditors for debts below £20, conduct money, and 2 months' pay in advance, from which they were expected to buy basic kit, including a hammock from the ship's purser. Once in service, pay was typically always in arrears to discourage desertion. The first of 3 Quota Acts was passed in 1795 by the government led by William Pitt the Younger. Under its terms, each county in England and Wales had to provide a set number of men for naval service. It was known colloquially as the Quad. Quotas were based on population and number of seaports. So, for example, Yorkshire, a large county with several coastal villages, was required to find 1,081 men. Inland Rutland, a small county, just 23. London, with its busy docks, was expected to find 5,704 men. County authorities were fined for failing to meet their allocation, leading some to offer cash inducements to encourage men to make up the numbers. Magistrates were responsible for overseeing action to meet the quota and for sharing the burden equally among parishes. Men convicted of petty offences were typically offered the choice of signing up or a prison sentence. Some counties took the opportunity to empty their jails. In Samuel Johnson's opinion, no man will be a sailor who has contrivance enough to get himself into a jail, for being in a ship is being in jail with a chance of being drowned. A man in jail has more room, better food, and commonly better company. Dr. Johnson was not taking account of typhus, which was rife in jails of the period, and his assertion that a man in jail had better food is certainly questionable. By the standards of the day, rations in the Royal Navy were regular and generally of reasonable quality. A third act extended the quota system to Scotland. The impress service or press gang, legally compelling men to serve based on the royal right to call men for military service, was used regularly in wartime from the mid-17th century. A similar process had operated from Elizabethan times, and there's evidence of the practice taking place earlier. Under the Vagrancy Act of 1597, men of disrepute could be forcibly drafted. In 1703, an act was passed limiting the seizure of men to those under 18 and not apprenticed. In 1740, the age limit was raised to 55. In practice, the press gang took little notice of these constraints. Once taken, men would be offered the choice of volunteering and receiving the cash benefit of doing so, or being pressed anyway. Hobson's choice. Certain types of employment were exempted, and those in reserved occupations were given an Admiralty chitty. Even that was sometimes not enough to ensure safety. In an emergency, such protection was waived in what was known as a hot press. Seamen on merchant ships, who were better paid than those in the Royal Navy, could be forced to transfer as long as they were replaced. An opportunity for inexperienced pressmen to be exchanged for skilled sailors. Around half of the 120,000 men serving in the Royal Navy at the time of the Battle of Trafalgar were pressed. Both the quota system and impressment ended in 1815 with the defeat of Napoleon at Waterloo, although the power to reintroduce impressment in an emergency was retained. Some pressed men, like apprentice stonemason John Quilliam, impressed at the age of 20, went on to enjoy a successful career in the Royal Navy. Rising through the ranks, he was a lieutenant on HMS Victory at the Battle of Trafalgar and was later promoted to captain. It's difficult to fully understand how impressment was viewed at the time. To be effective crew members in combat situations requires a level of solidarity, the comradeship that develops from shared hardship and danger. That there was at least some level of acceptance is supported by a substantial number of pressed men volunteering to continue in service when given an opportunity to leave. Strict discipline was enforced in the Royal Navy, but trouble occasionally flared. 2 major mutinies took place in 1797, and they will be my subject next time. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons and click on the notification bell to be informed when the next video is available, or you can subscribe by clicking on the rose window over my shoulder.